Shalom, everyone, to Insights into the Weekly Haftorah. This week's Parsha is Lech Lecha. Here we really get to meet Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu. They are already mentioned in the end of the book of Noach, the Parsha of Noach. But Lech Lecha and the next really three Parshas is about Avram and Sarah. And so we would obviously expect that the Haftorah is going to have some connection to Avram, because that's the general principle of all the Haftorahs. It is going to share at least one of the themes. Many Parshas, this Parsha, we could say it's just about Avram and Sarah. Many different incidences in their life, but it's about Avram and Sarah. Other Parshas, you can have 5, 6, 7, 8 seemingly different incidences happen. And the Haftorah is only going to pick one of them to connect with. But here, the major theme is Avraham. And so the Haftorah is from the book of Isaiah, the beginning in the 40th chapter, the 27th verse, and it goes to the 41st chapter to the 16th verse. And what's interesting here is that over and over in this prophecy from Isaiah, God is referring to all of Israel as Jacob, as Yaakov. And a few times it says, like for example, in the 10th verse of the 41st chapter, it says, Al tira, don't be afraid. Speaking to Yaakov, don't be afraid. Later again it says, fear not, weak Yaakov, people of Israel, for I will be your help. So this whole Haftorah, this prophecy of Isaiah, is very much about God strengthening Yaakov and Israel, meaning all of Israel. But there are two references to Avram, two very important references. The first one is in the 41st chapter. So it says like this. Isaiah is talking about God. And he says, Mi ha'ir mimizrach tzedek yikra ehu l'raglo. The one who awoken in the east, righteousness, and he proclaimed, the person who would proclaim God's righteousness at every footstep. And so the commentaries say, who is this talking about? Avram. And what's interesting, because we learned this in the book of Yoshua, that the Euphrates divided between the east and the west. And so here, that's the reference to Avram. It says, who aroused from the east, who would proclaim God's righteousness? That is Avraham. And then later, one of the main ideas, it says like this. V'yata Yisrael, and now Israel, Avdi Yaakov, my servant Yaakov, Asher b'charticha, the one that I have chosen, Zera Avraham Ohavi, the seed of Avraham who loved me. So here, in both of these verses, it's, even though God is talking to Israel, talking to Yaakov, encouraging them, in both places, it's clear that everything comes from Avram. And here's even the definition. Why? because Avram was the one who loved me. In a certain way, Avram was the one who, call it, discovered me and made his life mission to spread the teaching of one God in the world. And of course, this is why the premise of my book, One Was Avram. The subtitle is Reflections on History's Most Influential Person. That was the claim of my book, One Was Avram. One Was Avram is a different verse from the prophets. One unique was Avram. And it's true. And that's what really the Haftorah is saying here. Who awoken this person from the east who would then walk in my ways and spread my righteousness? That was Avram. He's the beginning of everything. And he's the beginning of everything because he loved me. And of course, God loved Avram. And going back to the song that we heard, for those who were here at the beginning, was the same idea from Nehemiah, that you are God who chose Avram, and you took him from Ur Kasdim, and you gave him the name Abraham because you found his heart faithful to you. And so that was the Haftorah that the sages picked out for this parsha, because it all begins with Avram. And we'll put in Sarah also. Sarah was an equal influence. But here, the emphasis is on Abraham. And what's interesting is on Motzi Shabbos, there's all kinds of songs that are sung on Motzi Shabbos. And some people sing all of them. One of the more famous one is, it's really based on this Haftorah, Al Tira Avdi Yaakov. Don't fear my servant Yaakov. And that's really the theme of this whole thing, other than mentioning that everything comes from Avram, is this whole Haftorah is God saying, Yaakov, don't fear, I'm with you. I will not abandon you. And so I want to bring up one other point here. So here we have in this Haftorah mention of Yaakov, and again, it's symbolic of all of Israel. But we also have Avram. So what's the connection between Avram and Yaakov on a deep level? On a simple level is, without an Avram, you wouldn't have a Yitzhak and Yaakov. So Yaakov is Avram's grandson, and obviously there's a connection. But there's a Zohar that says like this: when Avram was taking Yitzchak to Akedat Yitzchak, and it says that he traveled for 3 days. You can imagine the existential turmoil Avram was in. Because on one hand, God had promised him that he would have a child, and he waited till he was 100 years old. And then God assured him on a number of occasions that Yitzchak will carry on the tradition. And then God comes and says, take Yitzchak and offer him up on Har Moriah. Like, how paradoxical can you get? Like, how could Avram even understand how do these two things work together? And so he is walking towards Har Moriah, and in the text it says, and it was on the 3rd day that Avram lifted up his eyes and he saw the place from afar. Meaning, and for those people who have been to Jerusalem, it's called the Tayelet. There's a place that when you're coming from the south, and Avram was coming from either Hebron or Beersheba towards Yerushalayim, There's a certain place you get to a ridge to this day, and you look up and you see all of Jerusalem spread out before you, including the Temple Mount. And so we're told that this is exactly where Avram says he lifted, on the third day, he lifted his eyes and he saw the place from afar. So the Zohar says, what does this mean more than just a physical description of what happened here? So the Zohar says, the third day, this is Yaakov. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Yaakov is the third. And so he lifted up his eyes and he saw Yaakov from afar. He had this vision that it wouldn't end with Yitzchak. He came to understand that he would take Yitzchak up and they would go through, call it the motions, but deep down inside, he came to understand there's no way that God is going to actually have me do this. And of course, that's how it turned out. And I invite everyone in Orchard of Delights in next week's Parsha, not this week's Vayera, there's a piece called The Silence of Avraham. And it's a very, very important piece to try to understand why didn't Avram say anything to God? This is the same Avram who pleaded for the evil people of Sodom. And here he doesn't say a word to, as it were, convince God that you can't really command me to do this. He doesn't say anything. But if you look in the Orchard of Delights, it answers why that was. And part of that is he lifted his eyes on the third day and he saw the place from afar, meaning he saw in the future that there would be a Yaakov. And then he understood that the Akedat Yitzchak would not happen in a physical way. So that's a deep understanding of the connection of this Haftorah of mentioning, because it says Yaakov, remember it says, V'yata Yisrael Avdi Yaakov, and now Israel, my servant Yaakov, Asher Becharticha, that I have chosen, Zera Avraham Oavi. You're the seed of Avram who loved me. So here is this deep connection between Avram and Yaakov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
No.
Thank you.